Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining and welcome to our webinar, Why CISOs Get Fired. My name is Rebecca Ellis and I'll be the moderator for today. So we have a very interesting topic today, and if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to send them to questions@spherecode.com. So leading the discussion, we have three of Sphere's very own experienced industry leaders. First off, we have Bill Noonan, Senior Director of Sales and Marketing.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone.
Then we have Rosaria Mastro-Giacomo, Director of Architecture and Design.
Hello, everyone.
And last but not least, Douglas Bain, Director of Professional Services.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
So thank you all very much for being here today. I know you have a lot to discuss. So I want to open this discussion by asking the question, what are the biggest challenges CISOs are facing today? So Doug, just because you're right next to me, do you want to take the floor with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons, and you know, one of the biggest reasons that we see, especially in the news, is around data breaches. And there's a lot of reasons why these data breaches are occurring. You know, you've got a lot of, traditionally you've had a lot of breaches occurring because people are getting through firewalls or doing penetrating their perimeter, but nowadays that's changed, right? Now we're seeing more people on the inside getting access to data they shouldn't have, and it's being exfiltrated through the normal channels, the permitted channels, right?
Yeah, I think the problem is traditionally it was always about protecting the perimeter and protecting, kind of creating a moat around the organization. But as the industry changed and as that moat became more dry, as you had to get services outside the organization, SaaS services, it became more about the data. And once it became about the data, you were under the assumption that someone will come through your perimeter. In fact, you're inviting people in and inviting people outside of your perimeter. So it's all about protecting the data. And in that context, you also had to protect the data against the people that were inside, right? So really, it's creating those bubbles around the data points and the assets, and that's really what a CISO faces today.
I think CISOs face a lot of challenges, right? It's not just the data, but I mean, there's so many things that a CISO is responsible for that they might not know exactly. So we're talking about insider versus outsider. But that's just about data, but there's also a ton of stuff about applications, about servers, about all kinds of different things that a CISO is responsible for. And I think one of the biggest challenges that they face is kind of the lack of visibility, right? Yeah. What do I have? How many times do we go to a prospect and say, well, we want to do something to help you, give us a baseline, or where are you now, or how much data do you have, or who owns the data, who has and the look of, I'd love to be able to tell you that, but I can't. That's kind of the first.
They just don't know.
They don't know, and they don't know. They don't even know where to start, and that's that first level of fear. And kind of when you ask people, what keeps you up at night? It's the stuff I don't know about.
Right.
And so many of these things that you talk about, Doug, is the breaches and all that stuff. Is you know what? I didn't even know about it.
Right. And we have some customers. You tell them how much data they have in their environment. Well, after you get them started, and they can't believe it. They can't even put their mind around it because how much it is, and then they're just like, well, how am I supposed to handle this?
Right. Imagine you have to fix a leak in your roof and you have no idea how big the roof is, and that's what we face all the time. It's like, I know I have issues, I know I have leak, I see the water, I know that potentially I'm going to have lots of problems. I just have no idea the scale of the problem. And then we go in and we typically will tell them this is actually what you have, and they're shocked. They're shocked that they didn't realize the scope of what they had.
Right. Because really, they're trying to manage risk, right? A CISO, in essence, is managing risk. They can't, if you say to someone, oh, well, you're going to stop everybody from doing bad things inside or outside, they can't. They know that. They want to manage risk as much as possible. One of the things that I need to do as a CISO that's going to limit my risk, mitigate any problems, and then help me identify what those risks are and what can I do about it. Right. Some things you're like, I don't even know where to start, but if we start with the visibility, right? We have all of this stuff. All right, now I know all this stuff. and now I know what's the risky stuff, and then you have to make decisions.
Yeah.
Again, because you don't have unlimited budgets.
Right.
If you had unlimited budgets, then it wouldn't be a problem. But that's another thing they struggle with.
Right. The other thing is that, the board of directors of a lot of these companies are starting to be aware of what's going on, and so now they're starting to ask questions, and the CISO needs those answers, right? And it goes back to that visibility. They need that visibility of what the problems are, whether it be around their data security or their perimeter vulnerability attempts. All those things, they need some reporting, they need some metrics in order to gain visibility into the environment.
And visibility is really the precursor to the reporting, right?
Right.
Visibility is kind of the understanding that you need the tools and the people in place to get to that reporting phase, right? Without the understanding of kind of the scope kind of tells you, well, this is how big of, this is everything I have. Reporting is, okay, now where are the issues within all this huge mess of things that I have? And if you look over the years, as data evolved, as technologies evolved, as companies and technologies changed, it just got more and more complex, and it continues to get complex as new technologies get introduced, and just having an understanding of the balance between everything I have, and then what are the things that I need to focus on that represent the biggest risk to the organization, I think is key.
Yeah, I mean, and you also have a lot of, you might have some regulations, it gets back to you might have audit, findings, and then again, these people are not looking. They're not looking until someone else finds it for them.
Right. It's more reactive than proactive.
Right.
And so, the folks that we talk to who are proactively looking for a lot of these things, they're trying to figure out what should I be worried about.
Yeah.
Right. So you're gathering all this information, but then again, it's the reporting. So yeah, we do the big analysis, but then how do you report on it? What makes sense? Because they have a lot of different tools. Some looks at privileged accounts. Some will look at access management. Some looks at your governance of your data.
Right.
But there's really not any one thing that you can look at and say, oh, this shows me all of my environment and everything. But if you have good reporting,
right,
you can do that, and that will help them guide them to where they need to put resources.
But reporting is more than a spreadsheet. I think a lot of times we'll find tools that are essentially giving you, here's your big list of all the problems, right? And here's everything that's broken with your unstructured data, with your databases, with your Active Directory, with your privileged access. But it's got to be more than just a huge list of issues. It's kind of like, when that check engine light comes on in your car, you need more information than the check engine light. And unfortunately, with a car, you could bring it to your mechanic. But if you're the CISO, you kind of are the mechanic. You employ the people that have to tell you what that check engine light means. So you need to go out and figure that out. So the reports need to be better than just a huge list of everything that's broken. It's kind of, what do I focus on? What do I go to? Which ones are the ones that are going to make the car run, and they're not going to cause long-term damage to my engine? Right.
Yeah, I mean, identifying what these key risk indicators are, for an organization is really important. You've got different organizations care about different things. A healthcare organization is going to be different from a financial services company.
Right, so there's not one size fits all. This is going to plug in, we're going to plug in, and this tool is going to solve all your problems. Everybody's looking for that magic bullet, and there really is no one singular magic bullet, but it's a lot of different things that you need to do from, all right, now you have these metrics, and you're putting programs in place, and then you're trying to see that all of your programs are being followed, and the metrics will show you that.
Well, what happens a lot of times is they'll get audited, or there'll be some problem. Maybe they have a matter requiring attention from the OCC or something, and they'll go out, they'll run out to buy a tool, say, okay, we got this tool in, and now we're running a report that we said we were going to run, and it's going to make everything better. It satisfies the auditors, and everyone's happy. But then, over a year or so, and they stop running it, or something happened, the person left the company, and now they're not doing it anymore. And they really never put in that program in place, and they never really put the solid foundation of reporting around what they need to do. And that's what we see all the time.
And it's not just the reporting, it's also the policies, the controls, right? There's the stop the bleeding, the reporting on the issues, the stop the bleeding, and then remediating the issues, right? It's those three things. And a lot of times, the tool will not fix the issues. The tool will report on the issues. And there are tools that will fix some issues to some extent. But just implementing those tools and changing corporate culture to be able to implement and use those tools is a big challenge. It isn't something like you could go out, spend $1 million, and all these issues go away. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that will say, yeah, spend $1 million with us and all your issues go away. And we've learned over time that is impossible. And I think we're pretty upfront about that. When we talk to our customers, at least, I think we tell them, look, we work with different products, but not one product can solve all your problems. It's really understanding what that product is meant to do, using it for what it's meant to do, but then enhancing everything else with the other products that you may already own. That's the thing. I mean, how many times do we go into a customer and they tell us these 10 different things that they own that they're just not using, and we're like, by the way, you could use this to do this. You could do this you could use this for ownership, or you could use this for to help you do remediation.
Right,
and they're just not aware that they own all this stuff and they could use it to do this cleanup.
But I think one of the big things that you talked about, Rosario, is culture, right? And driving this security-mindedness from not only the security folks or IT folks. It's not an IT problem anymore, right? It's now who owns this data, who has access to this data, and it's on the business side as well. Business people are starting to understand that it's a risk to them. Because quite frankly, in the past, listen, don't bother me with security. I'm making money. I need to do this. This is how I do it. Don't bother me with any of these controls. You're getting in my way. Well, now people are realizing, yeah, it's not getting in my way, because at the end of the day, if I'm on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, it's going to hurt, right? And the folks who are getting affected by that are the most senior level people. You're seeing presidents of companies, not only CISOs, but other people losing their jobs because of this. So I think it's more top of mind.
So really, this webinar could be, why do executives get fired, or why do CEOs? Because CEOs have gotten fired because of security issues, just as much as CISOs. And really, and we've talked about how, you hear about the big CISOs, you hear about the big breaches and CISOs getting fired, but there are CISOs that face these issues and challenges every day that we never hear about because it's just not big news. But it's happening every day, and I think
and it's not just for breaches. I mean, there's other reasons that people lose their jobs, about security and about not having the controls in place and not being able to say either to their board or to audit committees or whatever, this is the program that I have in place and this is how it works, because people are now coming and asking these questions all these times. How is this working? What do you have in place? This happened to this company. Are we on the hook for that? Are we next? And if they don't have those answers, then that, they might not have had the breach, but now the company's going to go find somebody who can get the answers, right? Who can do what they need to do.
Yeah. Especially when they see that their peer companies are having these issues, they start to question.
Right.
How many times do we get calls from companies who, someone else who's in their industry has faced these issues or just had a breach or a leak or some other issue, and now they start to wonder, can this happen to me? Am I a target, right? Why wouldn't I be a target if I'm about the same size, the same industry as this other company that has just faced this? Because of, again, lack of visibility, lack of reporting, and lack of understanding of what needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, but if they have, so you have all this understanding, and you have all this reporting, now what? What do you do with it? I mean, what's
Right.
I mean, you guys are the ones who actually now fix stuff. Yeah. And what do you see out there that's important to be fixed, or how do you do it?
So, we've been involved with a lot of customers who've tried this on their own and haven't failed, have failed, and this is where we come in. And the thing that the underlying challenge that I see organizations have is that they lack a cohesive strategy around what they're doing. Because without that, what they tried to do is say, well, we're IT, this is an IT problem, I'm going to fix it, right? And the problem is they never get the business involved, because the business needs to get involved. Because you're talking about, you mentioned, culture.
Yeah.
Now you're changing people's behaviors. They have to do something differently.
Right.
I think people have always been afraid to, change the password on the executive, executive's account because he knows the password and will upset him. It's like, okay, well, his password's, Fido or something like that, and it's
Password.
Password, right? So things like that. You have to change the culture, and you've got to. And you have to engage the business and get them excited about what you're doing. And the only way to do that is for them to see where you're headed. If you just say, hey, you need to go and you need to change your passwords, like, I don't want to do that, right? Or we need you to certify the people who need access to this data. Well, I don't see why I need to do that. No, but you have to have a good story around why you want to do it. I feel like we're always storytellers, in everything that we do. And
it's a lot of communication, right? It's not... You're not working in a silo.
Right.
And from a security standpoint, you cover the security of the entire organization. It's not just the IT department that you're covering the security for. So you have to be able to tell the story to everyone and have them understand the reason we're doing this is.
Right.
And I think nowadays they're getting it a little bit more, and it's also being pushed down from the top. If it doesn't come from the top, you need that support as well.
And that's what's interesting. It used to be that, years and years ago, probably aging myself, but there was that lone security guy, and that was the only person that cared about security. And infrastructure people would say, leave me alone, I got to keep the servers up. And business people would say, leave me alone, that's what I pay you for, go deal with security. And over time, you start seeing that now infrastructure people started thinking about, well, I got to worry about security just as much, because their managers are asking about that, and even business people care about security now. So,
developers, even application development and all of that.
Right. But
it's much more.
All that, despite kind of the awareness and kind of the irony is these big breaches that you see on the news has actually increased awareness. We still call it realistic remediation. You can't just say, well, we're just going to make everyone's password 256 characters. I mean, who's going to deal with that? Right? Yeah, it'll be very secure, but who's going to deal with that? You still have to be realistic. You cannot go in and say, here's a giant booklet of everything that you're doing wrong and everything that you have to fix, and impact the business. It's just that would be just as disruptive as actually having a major breach or a major vulnerability. So you got to always be aware.
Just not as newsworthy.
Just not as newsworthy. Although loss of profit could be pretty newsworthy.
Yeah.
So it's the understanding that what you're doing has to be realistic. It has to target, and again, this goes back to reporting. Target the highest risk items. Don't spin your wheels on the low-hanging fruit that doesn't really decrease as much risk as the higher target items that will have the biggest impact. But again, realistic. You can't just turn off the power.
And then it really comes down to ultimately having that target operating model that makes sense. And, that's really what you're driving towards, and understanding, what does the business need to do in order to implement this new program? What does the end state look like? How are we going to get there? What are all the things we have to incorporate? And that's where you get the feedback from the business. Hey, we want to make this change. It's going to impact you. Oh, that's not, we don't like that.
They have to be participants in it, right? It can't be a mandate and say you've got to go do this, because you know how people are. They're going to bristle.
Right.
Well, I'm not doing it. That's not me. But if you're talking to them or bringing them to the table and having the conversation, saying, here's where we are, and be realistic. Here's the risks that we have. This is what we need to do to be in a much more secure environment. I think in this day and age, now you're going to get more buy-in. Now you're going to get people, and again, if it comes from the top saying we need to do these things, and it's like anything else, there's a give and take, but it's got to be good communication.
And also a lot of times, when you make these kinds of changes, people don't realize this, but you actually streamline the operations and take a lot of red tape out of the process, and you actually make it go a lot faster because it's well defined and it's automated in a lot of ways.
Well, that's the thing, is now you can automate it. There's workflows. There are things. There's tools now that can help you with this. It's not just three guys in a room making sure this spreadsheet all works the right way. And going making changes to that. And now there's reporting and all of that.
A number of customers that still have to fill out paper-based forms and have them signed by hand and then hand it off to someone and inter-officing things. These are, I'm talking about like financial institutions.
It's archaic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when you think about all the tools that are available that you can send an email, and once you have the owner and all of that, all of kind of the work that's been done to implement all this, that it can be streamed. It's a click of a button or two.
So would that open access be when someone leaves the file cabinet open?
Yeah. Or just use a piece of paper on top of the file cabinet.
Yeah, it's you know, there's just so many ways now that are better than it was before. But again, it's making sure you have those programs in place, that you have the buy-in from the business, that you have the support of senior management. So it's not, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And this is the challenges that the CISOs have, is that it takes budget, it takes time, it takes buy-in. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to say, I'm going to take this on.
Right.
It's probably the biggest challenge that a CISO has is kind of managing, having visibility, being able to pick the right tools for the reporting and ultimately the certification of remediation. But then it's also a social thing of making sure that they have the right relationship with the business, that the business feels like they're a partner, that they're not someone that is kind of talked down to, you must do this. But it's like, let's work together to make sure that the organization is secure, to make sure that we're not in the news, and that collectively we're all working together towards the same goal. So those are probably, that last part is something that you can't solve with technology or with knowledge or with an MBA. It's more of a social thing, and really it is. It isn't the CISO just meeting with these people, but making the business feel like they're a partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you all very much. You brought up some very important points, but unfortunately we are out of time. So thank you to everyone who listened. This webinar will be available on our Bright Talk channel at Sphere Technology Solutions, and also will be available on our website at sphereco.com. If you have any questions, or if you would like a copy of our deck, please contact us at questions@sphereco.com. Again, thank you all, and have a good rest of the day.